Imagine you went on a road trip down to Mexico. You got food poisoning, so you stayed in the hotel, whilst your family went on an adventure to see the Aztec relics. Next thing, you hear that the cartel got them and you can't find the crooks that committed the crime. Whilst the Mexican judicial system isn't always the most reliable, corrupt almost, you could say. But in some instances, a different kind of investigator is called in to help, the psychic. Psychics claim to have a unique ability to tap into the supernatural realm and gather the information that is not accessible through conventional means. Skeptics may scoff at their methods, but there have been numerous cases where psychics have provided valuable insights that have led to the resolution of a case. Join us in this video as we explore 5 instances where psychic investigators played a crucial role in solving a case. From missing persons to cold cases, these stories will show us that sometimes the truth can only be revealed through extraordinary means. Want 3 free predictions about your life? Claim a free reading using the link below. Case number 1. June 9, 1987, started as a typical day for Andre Daigle, a 27-year-old New Orleans resident. He met up with a friend for dinner and drinks, followed by a few rounds of pool. And word on the street says he dropped a pill like a bad man. But what started as a fun night out turned into a nightmare for Daigle and his family. After a long night of drinking, and a few lines of white powder, Daigle vanished into thin air. His family and friends searched high and low, but there was no trace of him. The New Orleans Police Department didn't suspect foul play, and the case eventually went cold. But one person was not ready to give up on finding Daigle. His sister, Elise McGinley, lovely lass she is described as. She was determined to find her brother, no matter what it took. That is when she turned to a psychic, Rosemary Kerr, for help. Kerr was known for her psychic abilities and her success in solving mysteries. She placed her finger on a photo of Daigle and sensed that he was no longer alive. She also had a gut feeling that his body was in a New Orleans swamp. Despite the skepticism of the authorities, McGinley trusted Kerr's abilities and relayed the information to the police. And it paid off. Daigle's body was discovered in the exact location that Kerr had predicted, leading to the arrest and conviction of 2 men who admitted to killing Daigle for sport. The case became famous for the testimony of Rosemary Kerr, who was the first psychic ever to be placed on the witness stand in a murder trial. Her testimony shed light on the power of psychic abilities and their potential usefulness in criminal investigations. Case number 2. On November 23, 1982, Amy Hoffman disappeared after leaving her part-time job at a shopping mall in Morristown, New Jersey. Her car was found abandoned in the parking lot the next day with the driver's door open, leading the police to suspect foul play. Despite an extensive search and investigation, the authorities couldn't find any leads in the case. Desperate for a breakthrough, the police turned to local psychic Nancy Weber, who had previously assisted them in other cases. Nancy had already experienced visions of Hoffman's body and the assault she had suffered before being killed. She led the police in their investigation, giving them details about the murder and helping them focus their search efforts. Through her visions, Nancy identified James Kodetich as the prime suspect. Kodetich had a violent history and a criminal record, but there was not enough evidence to convict him at the time. However, Kodetich continued his killing spree, and on January 23, 1983, he murdered 25-year-old Deirdre O'Brien, a nurse from Pennsylvania. The authorities were able to link the 2 murders, and Kodetich was arrested and eventually convicted of both crimes. Case number 3. In 1987, the brutal murder of a 42-year-old nurse and mother of 5, Elizabeth Cornish, sent shockwaves through her New Jersey community. Although her boyfriend, who had discovered her body, was initially suspected, no one in her family believed he could have committed such a heinous crime. Desperate for answers, Cornish's sister turned to renowned psychic Nancy Weber for help. Upon arriving at the scene, Weber quickly sensed that the boyfriend was innocent and that the killer was actually a neighbor who lived directly above Cornish's apartment. Weber provided a detailed description of the killer that matched 33-year-old John Reese, who lived in the unit above Cornish's. Although Reese had initially provided an alibi for the time of Cornish's death, Weber remained convinced that he was the culprit and that the time of death was 4 hours earlier than originally stated. Webber's unwavering belief in Reese's guilt ultimately led to a re-examination of the case by the coroner, who changed the time of death, thereby rendering Reese's alibi invalid. In the end, Reese confessed to the murder of Elizabeth Cornish and was sentenced to life in prison. The case showcased the incredible intuition and investigative prowess of psychic Nancy Webber and demonstrated the critical role that psychics can play in helping to solve crimes. Before we move on and tell you the next solved case, if you've liked the video so far, consider subscribing, as we frequently upload such interesting astrology videos. And while you are at it, give this video a big thumbs up. Let's continue. Case number 4. On May 15, 1986, tragedy struck the small community of upstate New York when Dora and Jake Cohn, a loving elderly couple, were found dead in their home. They had been shot, and it was clear that the motive behind their murders was a robbery. Their grandson, James Mariani, quickly became the prime suspect, and law enforcement suspected that he had 2 accomplices, Keith Snare and Robert Skinner. All 3 had previously served time in prison. Despite questioning and investigating the 3 men for months, law enforcement could not find enough evidence to make an arrest. 2 years passed, and the Cohn family remained without answers until they heard about psychic Noreen Rainier. Desperate for any leads, the Cohn family requested that law enforcement bring in Rainier to work on the case. Skeptical but willing to try anything, law enforcement arranged a meeting between Rainier and a police hypnotist. Under hypnosis, Rainier revealed that the Cohns knew their killer and that 3 people were involved in their murders. With this information, law enforcement arranged a photo lineup that included Mariani, Snare, Skinner, and several other men who could not possibly have been connected to the crime. Rainier conducted the lineup with her eyes closed and was able to identify Mariani, Snare, and Skinner by placing her hands on their photos. This revelation led to a re-examination of the alibis of the 3 men, which ultimately fell apart under scrutiny. Mariani, Snare, and Skinner were subsequently arrested and charged with the murders of Dora and Jake Cohn. Case number 5. In 2004, 20-year-old Ashley Hurley vanished from her hometown of Columbus, Ohio, leaving her family and friends desperate for answers. Despite extensive searches and investigations, the case was not moving any further, and Ashley remained missing for 4 years. However, her spirit persisted, seeking a way to communicate with the living world to bring justice to her case. Finally, Ashley reached out to Christy Robinett, a spiritual medium from Michigan, who had a track record of helping law enforcement solve crimes. Through Robinett, Ashley's spirit conveyed that she had been murdered by her boyfriend and revealed the location of her remains. Despite initial skepticism, investigators followed the lead and discovered Ashley's body in the exact spot that she had described. The location was marked by a stick, as Ashley's spirit had instructed. Her boyfriend was subsequently arrested and charged with her murder. Even though this case is hard to believe, it is indeed what happened. Spirits are also ready to seek justice for their untimely deaths, and in some cases, they might help from spiritual mediums. Do you know any more cases where psychic investigators helped the police bring justice to victims? If so, share it with us in the comments below. Thank you for watching. Goodbye.